are here with, it's kind of a lunch with Lovely today, where we can kind of chat live with you all about different case topics we've been talking about on the Carolina Justice Report. So we're excited to do that. Last time we did that, we had a lot of great interaction from people and questions. So, but yeah, Amy, you've got lots of good stuff to chat about today.
I'm on fire.
Well, tell me about this podcast you were on last night.
So I've been doing, I got invited during the Murdaugh trial to do Surviving the Survivor, which is a really big YouTube, it's become a true crime podcast. And it's got, like 100,000, maybe 200,000 followers.
Wow.
And I love the people involved in it. I'm on with Lonnie Combs, who is an attorney who does a lot of commentary. And then Amy Zimmercheck is on there with us sometimes. Last night we were on there. We were talking about the Lori Vallow case out of Idaho, which for those of you who maybe don't know about that case, I can jog your memory. So this is the one where we saw that she was in Hawaii with her new husband. So Lori Vallow has been married 5 times. Her children were killed. And when they were trying to find the kids because they went for a welfare check, because no one had heard from them, it opened up Pandora's box. And what we learned is that she wouldn't tell them where anybody was. And she was asking her friends to lie and say that they were with them. Yeah. And she had a daughter named Tylee and a little boy named JJ, and they were gone. They'd been murdered. And so she took off and went to Hawaii. She got married for the 5th time, all during this. And what we learned as the case is unfolded is everything that she touches, people die. One of her husbands, which I think it was her 3rd husband, which is Tylee's father, he ultimately dies. And they say it's from natural causes, but everything about it is wrong.
Yeah.
They found his body like weeks later after he died. There were flies and a smell coming in, and the neighbors smelled something and called the police. But what's weird is that she lies and says that she found the body. Like, it's all these weird lies that go along with it.
I watched the Netflix.
Oh, did you?
I think there's like a true crime Netflix on the Lori Vallow stuff, and it's just so weird. Like it reminds me a little bit of the Murdaugh stuff now that I think about it, because there's so many weird.
But then add a cult into it.
Yeah. And because there's just so many people that get like affected by this.
It's absolutely crazy. So there's all these bodies. So she has a brother, and her brother's name is Alex, and they have a really weird relationship. And what we learned, what we've recently learned through some release of the evidence is that Alex's first wife came forward and said that there was a really weird sexual relationship with Lori, the sister, and Alex, the brother, and that they would simulate sex acts and talk about sexual things. And then she would wrap her legs around him, and these weird things that were going on. And he had he'd been accused of having sex with a 15-year-old girl. And then we later learned that he'd went to prison he'd been sentenced to 5 years for aggravated assault with Joe Ryan, which was one of her husbands that died, the one we were just talking about, which is crazy. It's like when things become inconvenient for Lori, these people go away. So she was in a custody battle with Joseph Ryan, and then he dies. And it's the same one that her brother had assaulted and done prison time for. And then we learn, she eventually marries Charles Vallow, and they adopt JJ. He was the grandson of Charles's sister and had a really hard time. And so they adopt this little boy, and he's special needs. I think he was autistic. I'm not sure exactly, but he had some issues going on, and just like a lovable little sweet boy. And so they've got these 2 kids. There's another son from another marriage who is a lot older, and he's having his own children at this point. So he's not really involved. And you probably saw him on the podcast or the Netflix special. And it's just like one. And then, so Charles realizes that Lori has become, they are Mormon, they're LDS, but she has taken it to an extreme. and has become obsessed with this man named Chad Daybell. And Chad is the most uncharismatic guy you've ever met. How this guy is like a leader of anything, I will never know. Like very monotone, very unfortunate looking, like weird. Yeah. So then so she becomes obsessed. She starts doing these podcasts about, she believes that, there's zombies and levels of zombies, and she's calling her children zombies and how they have to be killed. So we were like thinking like maybe there's some mental illness going on here with her.
It makes me so sad.
It's crazy. And then all of a sudden her children, Charles is killed, and he's killed by who? Alex. Alex says that, he was at the home. Charles shows up, and Charles is going to everyone asking for help. I mean, we see him pleading with the police. We see him calling, because we've got body cams, all this other stuff.
For the children.
For help for the kids and for her, because something's wrong and he knows it.
He's worried.
And so he goes to pick up the kid, or he goes to pick up JJ or visit or something along those lines. And Alex kills him. And he says that he hit him in the head with a baseball bat. So he shot him. And what's crazy is that Lori is there and then takes JJ to school right after the murder. And then she comes back and the police interview her for like 20 minutes. And because she's really pretty, Lori Vallow is a really pretty lady, and very charismatic, and she turns it on. No one really thinks twice. And they're like, oh, it was obviously self-defense, and nobody thinks any differently. But what we now know is that he was protecting and threatening, Charles, Alex was, and Lori, and I think this was a plan, because he was inconvenient at this point.
Yeah.
And so then within a couple weeks of his death, she's marrying this Chad Daybell. Well, I take that back. Then Tammy, Chad Daybell's wife of all these years, she dies of natural causes. But they have exhumed her body, and they've not told us really what the cause of death is. So everybody who's inconvenient with Lori in her life ends up dead.
Yep.
Which is crazy. And so the prosecution was going to try both Chad Daybell and Lori in a trial coming up starting, I think we're going to start hearing testimony or picking a jury on April 8th. And they have decided to sever the cases. The cases have been severed, so they're going to be tried separately. And Lori's is going forward, and they were seeking the death penalty with Lori Vallow. But the judge ruled about an hour ago that he was taking the death penalty off the
What would
table.
be the reason for that?
Well, she was found to be incompetent. And then she was restored and found that she was fine and knew what she was doing. And the judge cited multiple reasons, but mainly we don't kill and put to death mentally handicapped people or mentally ill people. So
we shouldn't.
We have. Right. I don't believe in the death penalty. Sarah doesn't believe in the death penalty. We get it wrong. We don't need to be killing people. It's a whole nother plethora of, that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down that we won't have to go down today. But I think that's a good thing. But I think that if they ever were going to give the death penalty, I think it would probably be in this one, because Idaho just doesn't give the death penalty.
Well, yeah, and I think that I read Miss Vallow's attorney he made all of those arguments about her mental illness and the state making some mistakes and all those things. And then he brought it very practically to the state of Idaho has been trying to kill people who are currently on death row, and they can't get the chemical. And so death row, for lack of a better term, is all backed up. It's a very long line. Yeah. And so it's just sort of a waste of resources at this point to do that. And so I'm not sure, I haven't read the order, but I'm happy that the death penalty, I don't believe in the death penalty, but interesting.
It's a good thing.
It's interesting.
Well, and I do think she's mentally unstable. I know there are a lot of times where cases come up where they try to claim that they have a mental issue, and it's like
my problem with Lori, because we see people who are mentally ill all the time.
Yeah.
And that is its own issue. But my issue with her is she turns it on and off.
Yeah, that's what because I saw some of the Netflix documentary. I'm not sure I finished it, but it seems very you have evidence of her being mentally ill on these podcasts. She sounds mentally
bonkers,
ill.
Right?
But then it's some of the things are so calculated that it doesn't really.
There's no continuity with her belief system.
Yeah.
So if she really bought her own bullshit, then why, when the police are looking for her children, she says she doesn't know, or she won't tell them, or she says she's with a friend, right? Why not just say, I killed them? They were zombies. You don't even understand. And like, she had these weird names for all these people, like Ned and Nick, and that doesn't carry through. If she really believed it, then that would have been the response when the police come. If she were really mentally ill and believed all this stuff, then why not carry that through when you're talking to the police? Because if you really believed it, that's what you would have told the police.
Well, and I know she has an older son too, who was out of the house by then, because I remember him from the Netflix, where he, first the country knew that these children were missing. And at first everybody was like trying to find these kids. And then it turned into, oh, the mom knows something, and the mom has fled, and the mom, all this weird stuff came out. And I know that older son kept trying to reach out to his mom and be like, where are my siblings? Yeah. And I don't know. I guess that's a whole separate thing, but just something I thought was interesting. But I think this all started because she started getting into this church.
And her brother got into it with her.
Right. And then she met Chad, which plunged her even further into it. And so everything that they had done was supposedly under this church thinking that they had to get all the demons and zombies and whatever. They had to rid themselves of them.
I don't know a lot about the Mormon church, but I do know, I don't think zombies are anywhere in there.
They're not.
No, I know. I'm joking.
I'm disturbing.
But they're not. She was.
Me too.
They were both.
Definitely no.
Well, and it was like Chad had these, I don't want to say visions, but he had these things that
he wanted to be a prophet.
know. Well, he would know who was the zombie and who wasn't. And whoever popped up as the zombie, which was really whoever was inconvenient for them, had to die, they had to be rid of.
Well, Alex ultimately ends up dead.
Yeah.
How convenient for Lori, right? The guy who does her bidding, who gets his hands dirty. That's what I always say. I don't think that she killed her, actually was the one who killed her children. I think it was at her direction. And I say that because why would she, when she has all these men that are falling all over themselves to do whatever she wants?
She had everyone brainwashed for sure, because her brother felt the same way that she did. Like, he was all about whatever church,
cult. Let's just say cult.
Views, that they were in.
We think good when we hear of church. So
he followed along and was all in cahoots with that. And I won't say I think this way, but the Netflix documentary made it seem like he did most of the killings initially, and then kind of got in too deep, knew too much, and kind of suspected that he was going to get murdered, and then did. So, it's
and
just,
one of the things that I think
crazy.
is, so they found the bodies of Tylee and JJ on Chad Daybell's property. And I think this is completely crazy, but those two little children have still not been buried. The state still has custody of their remains. And we haven't heard anything about cause of death either. They've been very close-lipped on a lot of evidence, but it's weird because some of it they've been willy-nilly and like releasing whole parts of the file and then holding back on the other stuff.
What do you think that is? That they would still have the bodies? Are they still investigating them?
That part I can't wrap my mind
idea.
around. I've been doing this a long time. I mean, I'm almost 16 years into practicing law. I've never heard of someone still holding on to and not putting those.
They do all of their tests, exams, investigation, and then you're allowed to bury the bodies. That is very strange.
It's like to give the defendants an opportunity to do any testing that they would want. That makes sense to me. But it's been years. I mean, it's been years.
To still have custody of them during the trial is wild.
And it gives, I think, for the families of the victim, that just is like blows my mind. It doesn't give them the closure that they need to be able to give them a final resting place.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking to me if I think of my children still being just like held somewhere.
So my heart breaks too for Kay Woodchuck and her husband, because they're the grandparents of JJ. And they're the ones who really got this whole thing started because they knew something wasn't wrong. They kept calling. They wanted to talk to their grandkid.
Oh, there was two, right? Wasn't there a boy and a girl?
Yeah. But JJ was biologically their grandson.
Gotcha.
They're the ones who talked or facilitated and thought it would be a good idea for Charles and Lori to adopt their grandson.
I remember that. They thought it was like a stable home
Yeah,
for Charles.
a good place because she was a loving mom and all this other stuff. And they just, they didn't know. As a matter of fact, Kay tuned in because on that podcast last night was Gigi from the podcast True Lies and Alibis, who we just adore. I'm a fangirl. And she's so awesome. She's going to be there for the trial and give us the blow by blow. But Kay was on in the chat last night because she's close with Gigi and the investigator for that family. Mm-hmm. But it was crazy because Kay and the investigator, Rich, were finding the evidence in real time because they had taken off. So like weird things that happened. Charles's Jeep, he's dead, was used to shoot at Lori's, like shoot a gun, like Lori's niece's husband, who she was estranged from. His name is Brandon. I can't remember his last name, like Bordeaux or something like that, which is really weird. And then as they're digging, she's still using Charles's Amazon account to order wedding dresses for her. I mean, he's been dead a week and she's ordering wedding dresses and wedding rings. Just really wild. She had fake email account names, just all kinds of crazy stuff.
It's crazy. And, is there new information that's come up about this case? Or is it just that her trial has kind of finally been set?
It's finally set.
Gotcha.
Just that the death penalty is off the table at this point, which is, a good thing. I do think that one time, because Idaho doesn't really give the death penalty. I think I looked it up, and since 1976, they've had 3 executions and 8 people currently sit on death row. So, some states give the death penalty, like Texas, like they're giving out like it's candy. But Idaho is the exception to that rule, which is a good thing. And so I really do think we were talking last night about whether or not a jury would put a woman to death. I think in this case they may. Depending on the evidence. I think that if there's ever a moment, it's the death of 2 of your children, the killing, the murder of 2 of your kids. Yeah.
And just the craziness of the story and all of the bad things, like what we know now.
So many deaths kind of tied
so many
to
deaths
it.
tied to
So
her.
many
She's
deaths.
probably the least sympathetic defendant.
Absolutely. I think,
which is not going to be great for her.
I found out last night too, because she has been coming to court dolled up. She was a hairdresser,
smiling in a lot of her photos, like not just smiling, but like
real
opposing smiling. It looked like
she is. So I think like her one vice is this Chad Daybell guy, her husband, her last husband. She was making motions. Her attorneys were making motions asking to have like a strategy session where they could meet and talk about their trial strategy, which the judge ultimately ruled against. But she keeps trying to get back to him. And in the last hearing, not the one today, but the last hearing, when you watched her, he was there. And she kept trying to she had
for him.
Yes, she had the most perfectly curled hair. Matter of fact, I didn't know this, but in that county, I just learned this. You can get a curling iron as a female and makeup as a female in jail. I've never heard of that before.
That sounds dangerous.
I know.
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds very dangerous.
Yeah,
impel some people with a curling iron.
It's hot.
Crazy.
Well, yeah.
Or burnt. It makes no sense, right?
Well, and why did they get that luxury? Is that just before, while waiting for trial, or even after trial?
At any time at the jail, you can get that.
Yeah.
And it's the local jail, not like the prison system, which is weird.
So weird, yeah.
Because we know that when you are on trial, you get to wear normal clothes and look appropriate. But I've never heard of full makeup, because now it almost looks like clown makeup, because it's super red lip, it's whatever they have, I guess.
Yeah, and at these hearings, it's not like she's wearing normal clothes like she would be.
Yeah, but she's dolled up,
still in her jumpsuit.
Yes,
with full hair and makeup.
Yeah,
glammed out.
As glammed as you can be with some Wet n Wild.
And Chad is there too.
Yes, and she's staring at him, and he is not even looking at her. And he was not arguing to be able to meet with her for this powwow session. And just as a woman and someone who is very intuitive of people and their body language, he is separating himself from her.
Well, it seems classic. I don't want to sympathize with her at all, but like male cult leader, brainwashing, impressionable, mentally ill female.
Mm-hmm.
He knows if she's mentally ill, I would doubt that
he's the mastermind, and she's
sort of,
trying to like.
I just think
he knows it's in his best interest too. I mean, there was deaths involved with her prior to him even coming in the picture, so he needs to remove himself.
Oh, I think that's exactly what he's doing, and I have a feeling
I think he's smart enough to know that
he will end up flipping and testifying against her.
I think so too. I did see also today the judge ruled on some discovery stuff. There was a ton of phone calls that they just turned over, like 3,000 or something like that. Hours. And so of Chad's, from what I understand.
Oh, is it Chad's?
Yeah, from what I understand, it's Chad's phone calls. And the state was kind of like, we're turning them over as fast as we can, which does not appear to be true. But he makes a lot of phone calls, and so it'll be interesting to see what he has to say. But I agree, he's probably going to flip and testify on her. If he's smart, he will.
Yeah, and
I think he is. I think he's the mastermind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You think he's the mastermind? Well, his kids don't end up dead.
I feel like he is.
No, I think he's the mastermind of the zombie cult.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
I feel like he's like the puppet.
I think he wanted to be.
I think he wanted her.
He wanted to be God.
Not have kids.
I think he wanted to be a prophet. You know what I mean? He wanted to be the one who decided who lived and died, maybe, or who
was like
went to heaven or
power
not.
Thing.
Yeah, totally.
But it wasn't love. Like for her, it was
no. And I think she really does love him.
Yeah, I think for her, it's like some mental illness, love,
infatuation. Yeah,
and with him, it's like this was purely just me.
And I think that he is. I think she's very pretty, and I don't think anybody has ever looked his way that is as pretty as she is. I do. I think that was part of it.
Maybe just feels
very unfortunate looking. That man.
Easy target for a cult man.
That's a nice way to put it, right?
Yeah, it's cracking me up that you keep saying that. It's funny.
She's beautiful, but
unfortunate.
I mean, like, not that pretty, but like I think that I think she has had the pretty privilege of everybody kind of giving her the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
well,
that's definitely
looks like a sweet mom.
That's
like
definitely how she's escaped trouble for all these other deaths.
She looks sort of very like clean cut, you know. Just
I mean, she's a hairdresser.
Yeah,
mom.
So it's just, you know, to me, it's not the stereotypical look. You know, she doesn't look rough which now she does. Now I feel like she looks rough, but I didn't feel like she looked rough before. Just very like a teacher or something.
Well, I think.
Yeah,
very well
up until this point.
Yep. It'll be interesting. So you're saying that they'll have two separate trials?
Yes,
Chad and her.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know when his is set, or is that we don't know?
No,
that yet?
He has waived his speedy trial.
Okay.
So at first they had the same attorney, and then the judge ruled that there was a huge conflict there, and appointed her to death penalty. And that attorney was not death penalty certified either. A guy named Mark Means, I think is what his name, out of Idaho, and he appointed two death penalty certified attorneys. And I think it's become really clear through the court filings and the arguing of motions that she's off her rocker, not listening to anything that they say, and she is in charge of her own defense, and they are very frustrated.
They're just trying to save her life.
Yeah.
Which they did today.
Which today was a win.
Yeah.
I mean, for you guys who don't know this, but when you have a death penalty case, the goal, the win is to get the death penalty off the table. That's a huge win. So that was a huge win. And you know that, like, I couldn't imagine doing I don't want to ever imagine doing a death penalty case. Like the idea that you would have that kind of pressure,
literally someone's
life in your hands. Just, it makes my chest hurt just thinking about it. I have a friend from trial lawyers college. That's all he does is death penalty cases. He's brought in for death penalty cases, and I just couldn't imagine. So I would be like crapping my pants, right? Have an ulcer, vomiting in my mouth all day long, all day, every day. So, you know, that's got to be a huge relief for them, because it also takes, because there's anytime in a death penalty case, you have to prepare for two trials. And the first trial is the trial of guilt or innocence. And then if they're found guilty, then we go into the sentencing phase. And then there's a whole trial about mitigation of why they don't deserve the death penalty.
And it's death penalty or not.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's always the debate too of like what's worse, like the death penalty or spending your life in prison. Because I feel like some people, do you think some inmates would prefer the death penalty over life in prison, or no?
No. Because when you're on death row, you were isolated from everyone and everything. I mean, all the things that you like in prison,
It's the worst place to be.
it's the absolute, it's,
And
prison's already the worst place to be. And then add in, that's the worst of the worst of
It's
the
almost
worst.
like solitary
there's
confinement.
a misconception that you're going to be given the death penalty, because even people who admit they're guilty and ask for the death penalty, that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
You're going to spend years on death row,
Mhm.
like sometimes 20 years on death row.
And death row is not the same as
And
normal jail.
It's
is basically
not a
what
good
you're saying.
place.
You're
to
isolated
be.
away
And
from
so it's
everything.
not like you get the death penalty and then they line you up.
Yeah, I didn't know
to
that. I
execute
figured
it.
they waited
No.
with everybody until
It's just and I think that's why, I'm not sure how everyone else feels. I'm strongly against it,
Me
but
too.
it's not just the death penalty. It's the whole system of the death penalty
Mm.
that is deeply flawed and horribly executed. And so it's
Pun not
I
intended.
was saying-
not intended.
Yeah.
It's just a horrible process, and it's just really not good for anybody
Hmm.
to be there. So I don't
It's-
think anybody
no,
would,
that's- And
it
nobody
breaks
would
my
choose
heart.
that over
It
life
also
in
breaks my
prison.
heart because I don't want anybody to think that we're not sympathetic to victims, because
Mm-mm.
100%, but it also gives them no closure either, if closure is even a possibility. But it keeps, because the appeals go on for so many years, for 20 years, every 6 months to a year, grief and heartache and all those things, I always say it's it will never go away, but you just learn to live with it. And the best example is like it's like having a brick in your pocket, and you just get used to the weight of it. So imagine every 6 months you kind of getting used to the weight of the brick and the weight of the loss of your loved one, and then someone kind of rips the Band-Aid open and brings the brick out and puts it in your hands and asks you to put it back in your pocket again.
Mhm.
It's got to be very, very, very hard for those families.
Yeah.
Because it's like a new court
There's no
date,
finality.
a new appeal.
Yeah.
It's you're like, oh, they've got the death penalty, but they're not going to. If life in prison, there's appeals, but there's some finality. They're just never coming out.
And usually it's within a couple years.
Mm-hmm. And that decision's made pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Well, I know we have some updates with the Murdoch murders as well. Anything you want to finish with, Lori, before we move on to that?
No, I think that I think we will have a trial. I do not foresee. Matter of fact, I mean, I hate to say this, and I'm going to curse for a second, just because. But like when I saw her picture after that hearing today, she had this like shit-eating grin.
Yeah.
And only people in the South will really understand what that means. I do not foresee her pleading to anything. I really foresee it going to trial, because I think she thinks, just like Alex Murdoch thought that he could talk to the jury, I think that she will think that she can.
Yeah.
too.
I mean, she's
done it her
just
whole
like
life.
him. She's played her way out of everything else. So I
Mhm.
think she might even demand to testify. Same as Alex might.
She's going to put on a show.
Yeah. I anticipate.
Yeah, I'll be interested too, because I feel like at this point she is very similar to Alec in the fact of like twisting the truth and like getting everybody to do what she's wanted them to do.
Right.
So I'll be interested to see that.
About
for
to find
sure.
out.
And we will live stream that if we can.
Well, no. Oh, you want to hear something crazy?
can't?
This is insane. We cannot. Listen to this. This is insanity. I've never heard of this in my whole life. I'm hoping the ACLU and a bunch of like attorneys for the press get involved, because I think this is crazy. So what we know about this case is that we have a new judge. I think this is his like first big trial,
Mhm.
and it was a death penalty case up until an hour ago. And we've got prosecutors who are new prosecutors who've never had a death penalty case or even a murder case. The lead prosecutor is a lady named Lindsay Blake. She's young, and she was a public defender for a couple years. And I think that for these prosecutors, they're a little worried, not worried, but like nervous, which I think that's normal, because this is their first big trial. And the judge ruled that this is insane. The judge ruled
Suspense.
I know. It's like
I'm sorry.
anticipation's
Say it.
killing me.
that it would not be live streamed. It would not be recorded. It would be recorded, but you would have to buy it for 25 cents a minute, which Gigi last night was had her little calculator out, and she's like, essentially, to get this, and they were talking about bringing out like giving it to you on like a DVD, like, or
They're
a
gonna
CD
burn the disc.
for people who wanted to buy it, so you knew that you wouldn't get it in real time.
What?
And so it would cost like $6,000, if not more.
That feels unconstitutional.
Yeah,
It feels
that's
unconstitutional. And
weird.
they were going to have, it would be streamed into a courtroom. And anybody who wanted to go watch it had to go to this other courtroom, which there's case law that says the press and the public have a right to be in that courtroom.
Well, the courts are a public forum.
Yes.
So anybody who wants to be there. I mean,
but I think the
there are some
paywall,
limitations.
I think the paywall is what I have a real problem with, because
You can't keep people out and then charge them for it. This
Right.
is court.
it's crazy. It makes no sense to me. Like I said, I'm hoping that the ACLU gets involved, or attorneys for the press, the local press, or Court TV, or whoever.
Wow.
Maybe,
Bring up that that's an issue.
yeah, or ask for like an injunction.
Do you feel like
or
they're
something.
doing that because of the Murdoch trial?
No, because I think the Murdoch trial taught us how almost effortless it could have went, and that we need, as a society and as a community, to see how the sausage is made. Do you know what I mean? Because when we do stuff in secret, it's only cloaked and clouded, and that's not the way it needs to be. I think also the reasoning, I think what I've read a lot of, is that the LDS Church does not want this to be.
Oh.
But I feel
Made a show.
Once
Mhm.
again, the
Yeah.
church should not have any say.
Right.
Again, unconstitutional.
Yeah.
To consider a
I think
church
that
when you're
that's
talking about
it's a
that.
protection for because it's such a huge Mormon and LDS community. But when I see Lori Vallow, I don't see the LDS Church and Mormons. I see a cult and who went off
Right.
on the deep
Like a
end.
Yeah,
break off
yeah.
cult.
Yeah, just like I don't see Muslims when I see ISIS. Like, you know what I mean? They're just
Right.
these people have lost their minds.
Extremists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably just, for me, it sounds like with everybody being new, it sounds like
I think
shout out to Judge Newman again. The
Right.
confidence to say, everybody watch this.
Yeah.
I have control of
Masterclass.
the space.
Right. I feel like they don't want the spotlight
Yeah,
on
I have
them
control
with
of
them
this
being
That's
space.
what I think it is.
Yeah.
That's what it
Everybody
is.
else is convinced it has to do with the church. I'm more convinced that we've got a new judge,
A new prosecutor.
prosecutor.
A giant case.
a ginormous case.
Yeah. So
I think that's
shout
what
out
it
to
is.
Judge Newman again. It takes the confidence to have the whole world watching you and still maintain control of the
Yeah.
situation. And so,
Yeah, I think the
Send him to
Murdoch stuff was a
Idaho.
masterclass in how it is done.
yeah, how to control it.
Wow. Man, I'm glad we got that little nugget from you.
Sorry.
That's interesting.
Forgot about that.
Do you think that'll fly, or do you think that'll get knocked down?
Well, I think anytime you're talking, especially when we were talking about a death penalty case, you don't want anything that could be an appellable issue. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah, that's a major problem.
Major
I
problem.
think. That'd be a major problem. I don't think it will be. I mean, it's not going to delay the trial. I think they're going to do it anyway. But then it might be like, is Lori Vallow's verdict going to get overturned because
of this
they
stupid
charged
stuff.
25 cents per minute?
And so we now know.
So if I'm the defense, I'm just
yeah.
letting that ride.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also the way they're doing stuff is really weird in Idaho. It's weird because with
It's a federal case too, right?
Oh,
I thought I just read about FBI agents doing investigations and stuff.
yeah, because it went across, because she went to Hawaii and stuff. But no,
Got it.
it's not a. I think they helped and assisted in it because they asked for assistance. I don't know. This whole thing has been really, really weird.
Well, every time you bring up Idaho, it makes me think of the recent Idaho murders,
Yeah.
too. And I'm kind of curious what they're going to do for that. You know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're about to find out.
Yeah.
Do you think that they'll
Send
go
Amy
for
to
the death
Idaho.
penalty for him?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think they've got the evidence.
Yeah, I
They're
think
doing that one right
they're.
so far.
That's exactly what
You
it
know,
is.
there's not as much of a not gray area because they won't really
Yeah.
even let us see this evidence, but it feels like that's going to go probably as smooth as Alec Murdoch did.
I don't think he will have a trial. Do you?
I think he's going to go to trial.
You do? I think it'll be a plea.
When I see him, you just see ego like the place.
Like he wanted to be notorious, and he's going to
He
go
wants-
out notorious.
He wants the news there.
What do you think? He's so smart. He's going to try and outsmart.
So smart. He bought that
everybody.
damn knife on
Yeah.
Amazon.
He thinks he can
Chief or
outsmart
whatever.
the jury and the system. And then I also think that his obsession with it was part of being Ted Bundy like famous.
Yeah.
And like serial killer
Notorious.
famous. And so
Yeah.
he might even try to like jump out the window like Bundy. Who
He's like,
knows?
I want a Netflix
He gives me that
series.
energy. Like
Yeah.
he wants a show.
Sicko. All these.
Yeah.
I think if we don't see any other like common thread in all this is like the ego of these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
Narcissistic
ego.
A lot of
behavior.
ego.